everyone, and welcome back to Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Today we will be reading Chapter 4, The Keeper of the Keys. Boom! They knocked again. Dudley jerked awake. "Where's the cannon?" he said stupidly. There was a crash behind them, and Uncle Vernon came skidding into the room. He was holding a rifle in his hands. Now they knew what had been in the long, thin package he had brought with them. "Who's there?" he shouted. "I warn you, I'm armed." Then there was a pause. Then smash! The door was hit with such force that it swung clean off its hinges and with a deafening crash landed flat on the floor. A giant of a man was standing in the doorway. His face was almost completely hidden by a long, shaggy mane of hair and a wild, tangled beard, but you could just make out his eyes glinting like black beetles under all of the hair. The giant squeezed his way into the hut, stooping so that his head just brushed the ceiling. He bent down, picked up the door, and fitted it easily back into its frame. The noise of the storm outside dropped a little. He turned to look at all of them. "Couldn't make us a cup of tea, could ya? It's not even been an easy journey." He strode over to the sofa where Dudley had sat frozen with fear. "Budge ya! Get ya up, you little lump," said the stranger. Dudley squeaked and ran to hide behind his mom, who was crouching terrified behind Uncle Vernon. "And here's Harry," said the giant. Harry looked up into this fierce, wild, shadowy face and saw that the beetle eyes were crinkled in a smile. "Last time I saw you, you was only a baby," said the giant. "You look a lot like your dad, but you got your mom's eyes." Uncle Vernon made a funny, rasping noise. "I demand that you leave here at once, sir," he said. "You are breaking and entering." Shut up, Dursley, you great prune," said the giant. He reached over the back of the sofa, jerked the gun out of Uncle Vernon's hands, bent it into a knot as easily as if it had been made of rubber, and threw it into the corner of the room. Uncle Vernon made another funny noise, like a mouse being trodden on. "Anyway, Harry," said the giant, turning his back on the Dursleys, "a very happy birthday to you. Got something for you. I got something for you right here. I might have sat on it at some point, but it'll taste all right." From the inside of his pocket of his black overcoat, he pulled a slightly squashed box. Harry opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a large, sticky chocolate cake with "Happy Birthday, Harry" written right on it in green icing. Harry looked up at the giant. He meant to say thank you, but the words got lost on the way to his mouth, and what he said instead was, "Who are you?" The giant chuckled. "True, I haven't introduced myself. Rubus Hagrid, keeper of the keys and grounds at Hogwarts." He held out an enormous hand and shook Harry's whole arm. "What about that tea, eh?" he said, rubbing his hands together. I'd not say no to sugar either, or something stronger if you've got it." His eyes fell on the empty grate with shriveled crisp packets that he had snorted in. He bent down over the fireplace. They couldn't see what he had been doing, but when he drew back a second later, there was a roaring fire in there. It filled the whole damp hut with flickering light, and Harry felt the warmth wash over him as though he'd sunk into a hot bath. The giant sat back down on the sofa, which sagged under his weight, and began taking all sorts of things out of his pockets of his coat. A copper kettle, a squashy package of sausages, a poker, a teapot, several chip mugs, and a bottle of some amber liquid which he took a swig from before starting to make the tea. Soon the hut was full of sound and smell of sizzling sausage. Nobody saw a thing while the giant was working, but as he slid the first 6 fat, juicy, slightly burnt sausages from his pocket, Dudley fidgeted a little. Uncle Vernon said sharply, "Don't you touch anything he gives you, Dudley." The giant chuckled darkly. "Your great puddin' of a son don't need any fattening up, does he, Dursley?" He passed the sausages to Harry, who was so hungry he had never tasted anything so wonderful, but he still couldn't take his eyes off of the giant. Finally, as nobody seemed about to explain anything, he said, "I'm sorry, but I still don't really know who you are." The giant took a gulp of tea and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Call me Hagrid," he said. "Everyone does. And like I told you, I'm keeper of the keys at Hogwarts. You'll know all about Hogwarts, of course." "No," said Harry. Hagrid looked shocked. "Sorry," Harry said quickly. Sorry, barked Hagrid, turning to stare at the Dursleys, who shrank back into the shadows. It's them that should be sorry. I knew you weren't getting your letters, but I never thought you would ever not know about Hogwarts, for crying out loud. Did you ever wonder where your parents learned it all from? All what? Said Harry. All what? Hagrid thundered. Now wait just a second. He had leapt to his feet. In his anger, he seemed to fill the whole hut. The Dursleys were cowering against the wall. You mean you've never been told, he growled at the Dursleys, that this boy knows nothing about anything? Harry thought that this was going a bit far. He had been to school after all, and his marks weren't even that bad. I know some things, he said. I can, do math and stuff. But Hagrid simply waved his hand and said, about our world, I mean. Your world, my world, your parents' world. What world? Hagrid looked as if he was about to explode. Dursley, he boomed. Uncle Vernon, who had gone very pale, whispered something that sounded like Mimble-Wimble. Hagrid stared wildly at Harry. But you must know about your mom and dad, he said. I mean, they're famous. You're famous. What? My mom and dad weren't famous? Were they? You don't even know then. You don't know? Hagrid ran his fingers through his hair, fixing Harry with a bewildered stare. You don't know what you are, he said finally. Uncle Vernon stopped and finally found his voice. Stop, he commanded. Stop right there, sir. I forbid you to tell this boy anything. A braver man than Vernon Dursley would have quailed under the furious look Hagrid now gave him. When Hagrid spoke, his every syllable trembled with rage. You never told him. You never told him what was in the letter Dumbledore left for him? I was there. I saw Dumbledore leave it, Dursley, and you've kept it from him for all these years. Kept me from what? Said Harry eagerly. Stop. I forbid you, yelled Uncle Vernon in panic. Aunt Petunia gave a gasp of horror. Oh, go boil your heads, both of you, said Hagrid. Harry, you're a wizard. There was silence inside the hut. Only the sea and the whistling wind could be heard. I'm a what? Gasped Harry. A wizard, of course, said Hagrid, sitting back down on the sofa, which groaned and sank even lower. And a thumpin' good one, I'd say, once you've been trained up a bit. With a mum and dad like yours, what else could you be? And I reckon it's about time you read your letter. Harry stretched out his hand at last to take the yellowish envelope addressed in emerald green to Mr. H. Potter, the floor, hut on the rock, the sea. He pulled out the letter and read, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Headmaster Albus Dumbledore, Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Score, Chief Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confederation of Wizards. Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have a place at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all the necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September the 1st. We await your owl by no later than July 31st. Yours sincerely, Mervina Margangall, Deputy Headmistress. It's McGonagall. We've already seen her earlier in the book. Questions exploded inside Harry's head like fireworks, and he couldn't decide what to ask first. After a few minutes, he stammered, What does it mean? They await my owl? Galloping Gorgons, that reminds me, said Hagrid, clapping a hand to his forehead with enough force to knock over a cart horse, and from yet another pocket inside his overcoat he pulled out an owl, a real live, rather ruffled-looking owl, a long quill and a roll of parchment. With his tongue between his teeth, he scribbled a note which Harry could read upside down. Dear Mr. Dumbledore, given Harry his letter, taking him to buy his things tomorrow. Weather's horrible. Hope you're well. Hagrid. Hagrid rolled up the note, gave it to the owl, which clamped it in its beak, went to the door, and threw the owl out into the storm. Then he came back and sat down as though this was as normal as talking on the telephone. Harry realized his mouth was open and closed it quickly. Where was I? Said Hagrid. But at that moment, Uncle Vernon, still ashen-faced, looked very angry, moved into the firelight. He's not going, he said. Hagrid grunted. I'd like to see a great muggle like you stop him, he said. A what? Said Harry, interested. A muggle, said Hagrid. It's what we call non-magic folk like them. And it's your bad luck you grew up in a family of the biggest muggles I have ever laid my eyes on. We swore when we took him we'd put a stop to that rubbish, said Uncle Vernon. We'd stomp it out of him. Wizard indeed. You know, said Harry, I knew I'm a wizard. Knew, shrieked Aunt Petunia suddenly. Knew? Of course we knew. How could we not have known, my drowning sister being what she was? Oh, she got a letter just like that and disappeared off to that school and came home every holiday with her pockets full of frog spawn, turning teacups into rats. I was the only one who saw her for what she truly was, a complete freak. But for my mother and father, oh no, it was Lily this and Lily that. They were so proud of having a witch in the family. She stopped to draw a deep breath and then went ranting on. It seemed like she had been wanting to say all of this for years. Then she met that Potter at school, and they left and got married and had you, and of course I knew you'd be just the same, just as strange, just as abnormal as them. As you please, she went and got herself blown up, and we all landed with you. Harry gone very white. As soon as he found his voice, he said, blown up? You told me they died in a car crash. Car crash, roared Hagrid, jumping up so angrily that the Dursleys scuttled back to the corner. How would a car crash kill Lily and James Potter? That's an outrage, a scandal. Harry Potter not knowing his own story when every kid in our entire world knows his name? But why? What happened? Harry asked urgently. His anger faded from Hagrid's face. He looked suddenly anxious. I never expected this, he said in a low, worried voice. I had no idea when Dumbledore told me there might be trouble getting a hold of how much you didn't actually know. Harry, I don't know if I'm the right person to tell you, but someone's gotta. You can't go off to Hogwarts not knowing. He threw a dirty look at the Dursleys. Well, it's best you know as much as I can tell you. Mind, I can't tell you everything. It's a great mystery, parts of it. He sat down, stared into the fire for a few seconds, and then said, It begins, I suppose, with a person called, but it's incredible you don't know his name. Everyone in our world knows. Who? Well, I don't like saying his name if I'm to be honest, if I can help it. No one does. Why not? Gumpin' gargoyles. Harry, people are still scared. Blimey, this is difficult. See, there was this wizard who went bad as could be. Worse than worse. His name was... Hagrid gulped, but no words came out. Could you write it down? Harry suggested. Nah, I can't spell it. All right, it's Voldemort. Hagrid shuddered. Don't make me say it again. Anyway, this wizard, about 20 years ago now, started looking for fellows. Got him too. Some were afraid. Some just wanted a bit of his power, because he was getting powerful himself, all right? Dark days, Harry. Didn't know who to trust. Didn't dare get friendly with strange wizards or witches. Terrible things were happening. He was taking over. Of course, some stood up to him, and he killed them. Horribly. One and the only safe places left was Hogwarts. Reckon Dumbledore's the only one you-know-who was afraid of. Didn't dare try taking the school. Not just then, anyway. Now, your mom and dad were as good as a witch and wizard as ever been. Head boy and girl at Hogwarts in their day. Suppose the mystery is why you-know-who never tried to get him up on his side before. Probably knew that they were too close to Dumbledore to want anything to do with the dark side. Maybe he thought he could persuade him. Maybe he just wanted him out of the way. All anyone knows is he turned up the village where you were all living on Halloween 10 years ago. When you were just a year old, he came to your house and Hagrid suddenly pulled out a very dirty spotted handkerchief and blew his nose like a sound of a foghorn. Sorry, he said, but it's that sad. Knew your mom and dad. Any nicer people, you couldn't find them anyway. You know who killed them. And then this is the real mystery of all the things. He tried to kill you too. Wanted to make a clean job of it, I suppose. Or maybe he just liked killing by then. But he couldn't do it. Never wondered how you got that mark on your forehead? That was no ordinary cut. That's what you get when a powerful evil curse touches you. Took care of your mom and dad and even your house. But it didn't work on you. And that's why you're famous, Harry. No one ever lived after he decided to kill them. No one except for you. And he killed some of the best witches and wizards of the age. The McKinnons, the Bowens, the Pruitts. And you was only a baby, and you lived. Something very painful was going on in Harry's mind. As Hagrid's story came to a close, he saw again the blinding flash of green light, more clearly than he had ever remembered it before, and he remembered something else for the first time in his life, a high, cold, cruel laugh. Hagrid was watching him sadly. Took you from the ruined house myself, on Dumbledore's orders, brought you to this lot. Load of old tosh, said Uncle Vernon. Harry jumped, as he had almost forgotten that the Dursleys were there. Uncle Vernon certainly seemed to have gotten back his courage. He was glaring at Hagrid with his fists clenched. Now, you listen here, boy, he snarled. I accept there's something strange about you, probably nothing a good beating wouldn't have cured. And as for all of this about your parents, well, they were weirdos, no denying it. And the world's better off without them, in my opinion. Ask for all that they've gotten into, getting mixed up with all these wizarding types. Just what I expected. Always knew they'd come to a sticky end. But at that moment, Hagrid leapt from the sofa and drew a battered pink umbrella from inside his coat. Pointing this at Uncle Vernon like a sword, he said, I'm warning you, Dursley. I'm warning you. One more word. In danger of being speared on the end of an umbrella by a bearded giant, Uncle Vernon's courage failed again. He flattened himself against the wall and fell silent. That's better, said Hagrid, breathing heavily and sitting down back on the sofa, which this time sagged right down to the floor. Harry, meanwhile, still had questions to ask. Hundreds of them. But what happened to you know who? Good question, Harry. Disappeared. Vanished. Same night he tried to kill you. Makes you even more famous. That's the biggest mystery. See, he wasn't getting any more powerful. Why'd he go? Some say he died. Codswallop, in my opinion. Don't know if he had enough human left in him to die. Some say he's still out there, biding his time. But I don't believe it. People who ought to be on their side came back to ours. Some of them came out of kind of trances. Don't reckon they could have done it if he was coming back. Most of us reckon he's still out there somewhere, but lost his powers, too weak to carry on. 'Cause something about you finished him, Harry. There was something going on that night he hadn't counted on. I don't know what it was, no one does, but something about you stumped him all right. Hagrid looked at Harry with warmth and respect blazing in his eyes, but Harry, instead of feeling pleased and proud, felt quite sure that there had been a horrible mistake. A wizard? Him? How could he possibly be a wizard? He'd spent his entire life being clouted by Dudley and bullied by Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon. If he was really a wizard, why hadn't they been turned into warty toads every time they'd tried to lock him in the cupboard? If he'd once defeated the greatest sorcerer in the entire world, how come Dudley had always been able to kick him around like a football? Hagrid, he said quietly, I think you have made a mistake. I don't think that I can be a wizard. To his surprise, Hagrid chuckled. Not a wizard, eh? Never made things happen when you was scared or angry? Harry looked into the fire. Now he came to think about it. Every odd thing that had ever made his aunt and uncle furious with him had happened when he, Harry, had been upset or angry. Chased by Dudley's gang, he had somehow found himself out of their reach. Dreading going to school with that ridiculous haircut, he managed to grow his hair back again. And the very last time Dudley had hit him, hadn't he gotten his revenge without even realizing what he was doing? Hadn't he set a boa constrictor on him? Harry looked back at Hagrid, smiling, and saw that Hagrid was positively beaming at him. See, said Hagrid, Harry Potter, not a wizard? You wait, you'll be famous at Hogwarts. But Uncle Vernon wasn't going to give in without a fight. Haven't I told you he's not going, he hissed. He's going to Stonewall High, and he'll be grateful for it. I've read those letters, and he needs all sort of rubbish, spell books and wands, and if he wants to go, a great muggle like you aren't going to stop him, growled Hagrid. Stop Lily and James Potter's son going to Hogwarts. You're mad. His name's been down there ever since he was born. He's off to the finest school of wizardry and witchcraft in the world. 7 years there, and you won't even know himself. He'll be the youngster of his own sorts for a change, and he'll be under the greatest Hogwarts headmasters ever had, Albus Dumbledore. I'm not paying for some crackpot old fool to teach him magic tricks, yelled Uncle Vernon. But he had finally gone too far. Hagrid seized his umbrella and whirled it over his head. Never, he thundered, insult Albus Dumbledore in front of me again. He brought the umbrella swishing down through the air to point at Dudley. There was a flash of violet light, a sound like a firecracker, a sharp squeal, and next second, Dudley was dancing on the spot with his hands clasped over his fat bum, howling in pain. When he turned his back on them, Harry saw a curly pig's tail poking through a hole in his trousers. Trousers or pants. Uncle Vernon roared. Pulling Aunt Petunia and Dudley into the other room, he cast one terrified look at Hagrid and slammed the door behind them. Hagrid looked down at his umbrella and stroked his beard. Shouldn't have lost my temper, he said ruefully, but it didn't work anyway. Meant to turn him into a pig, but I suppose he was so much like a pig anyway that there wasn't much left to do. He cast a sideways look at Harry under his bushy eyebrows. Be grateful if you didn't mention that to anyone at Hogwarts, he said. If I'm ever supposed to be able to do magic again, I'm not allowed to do it off-site. I wasn't allowed to do it after bit to follow. Oh my goodness, this is so hard to read, you guys. It's hilarious because it's all broken. None of it is actual words. Hagrid has terrible grammar. Letters to you and stuff. One of the reasons I was so keen on taking this job years ago. Why aren't you supposed to do magic? Asked Harry. Oh, well, I was at Hogwarts myself, but I got expelled, truth be told. In my 3rd year, they snapped me wand in half and everything, but Dumbledore let me stay on as a gamekeeper. Great man, Dumbledore. Why were you expelled? Well, it's getting late and we've got lots to do tomorrow, said Hagrid loudly. Gotta get up into town, get your books and stuff. He took off his hat, his thick black coat, and threw it to Harry. You can keep under this, he said. Don't mind if it wiggles a bit. I still have a couple of mice in there, in my pockets. And that takes us to the end of chapter 4. And then chapter 5, we're going to be visiting Diagon Alley, one of my favorite places. I'll see you later, guys. Hope you enjoyed it.